I need more quantum power.
I am the storm that is approaching.
So here's the thing. I was sitting at home scrolling through YouTube shorts and enjoying my day off when I got an ad for a mobile game called Power Rangers Mighty Force. As far as phone games go, it's nothing to write home about, but it kind of provided me with this sort of doomed epiphany. This is it. This is where Power Rangers is at. The only things going for it are a mediocre mobile game, some comics, and a tangentially related independent movie. And that's kind of miserable and depressing, especially for someone like me. I'm 22, I kind of grew up in the golden era of Power Rangers, from the Disney era to the Neo Saban era. One of the few highlights in my life during quarantine was meeting actors like the late Jason David Frank, Walter Emmanuel Jones, Nakia Burrese, and Catherine Sutherland. And while I fell off in later years, it's still a franchise that's very near and dear to my heart, and it sucked to see it go like this. Slowly fading away after being bought out by Hasbro and left in the hands of a producer who objectively doesn't get the franchise he's been handed. And even though this video has taken many forms in my mind over the last year or so, I think this is the note I want to play for now. Remembrance, a memorial, and a long, hard look at the legacy of the Power Rangers. I want to get one thing straight right off the bat. Love him or hate him, Haim Saban is kind of a genius. Haim Saban did not start producing television. He started as a bassist for a band he wasn't really doing a whole lot for musically, and then shifted to being their manager, eventually becoming a tour promoter for musicians like Ray Charles. His problem was that, despite his success in that role, the guy was still $600,000 in debt.
I had a big group of harpists from Japan in October of 1973, ready to tour the country, and the Yom Kippur War took us all by surprise. There were no concerts, no shows. There was no way for them to even leave because the airport was closed. I had to return the money. I had paid them in advance.
Thankfully, his luck turned around within a few years after producing a platinum album by singer Noam Kaniel, an album successful enough that Saban started his own production company and record label, eventually moving to Los Angeles and making dumb money off of composing for cartoons like Inspector Gadget.
When people would ask me, "What do you do?" I'd say I make music for cartoons. I could see the compassion in their eyes. I gotta tell you, there was no room for compassion. I was making money. Hand over fists.
And this is a guy who grew up with nothing. He had to share a one-bedroom apartment with his family of 5, and his dad was literally a door-to-door salesman for pencils. This guy was an underdog who needed to make money to never go back to that life again. So it's rather fortunate for him that he took a trip to Japan in 1984 and turned on the TV. By the time that Haim Saban discovered it, Super Sentai had existed for almost a decade, long enough that it had developed its own style and tropes. The series started in 1975 with Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, although technically that was its own thing that got added into the canon retroactively alongside its follow-up, Jakku Denji... I'm gonna fuck up so many of these pronunciations, and I'm just terribly sorry. Jakku Denji. In 1978, Toei, the Japanese film and television company responsible for Super Sentai, worked with Marvel to make Spider-Man. You know, the one you've seen a million memes of, and is in both Spider-Verse event books. Spidey doesn't quite factor into the story as much as you'd think, beyond adding one highly marketable staple: a giant transforming robot. With that, Sentai was given one of its most notable tropes, alongside such delightful novelties as color-coded uniforms, unique individual weapons, standardized sidearms, transformation sequences, devices to transform with, armies of faceless monsters, unique monsters in each episode, a climax where he gets giant, several smaller robots coming together to form one super robot to kick that giant monster's ass, etc. Super Sentai very much had a voice as a live-action superhero property aimed at kids in Japan, and while the US at the time had no problem entertaining kids through animation in the form of stuff like Transformers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's not hard to see why something like Super Sentai could be successful in the West.
Hey, you know, everybody's talking about the good old days, right? Everybody, the good old days, the good old days. Well, let's talk about the good old days.
So, back to Saban. Japan, 1984, he turns on the TV, and as he's flipping through, he finds Chodenshi Bioman, which is essentially Season 8 of Super Sentai. He falls in love instantly, and sees the popularity of the show in Japan, but also sees the potential of it in the States. And in one of the all-time most important sales in the history of pop culture, Saban purchased the rights to the action scenes in the show, and, alongside his producing and composing partner Shuki Levy, put together a pilot for a show simply called Bioman. And they shop it around to multiple networks to uproarious applause, open weeping at the beauty of what was created, and a metric assload of cash being thrown at Saban to continue his work. Right?
They said, "Why do you embarrass yourself?"
Yeah, this pilot wasn't exactly loved or taken seriously, and Saban and Levy would spend the next 8 years fighting to realize this vision. Their savior came in the form of Margaret Lesh, executive over at Fox Kids, the channel responsible for the everlasting pop cultural nostalgia death grip of things like Beast Wars, Pokemon, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Batman the Animated Series, X-Men the Animated Series, Spider-Man the Animated Series, and so on. Lesh was more sympathetic to Saban's goals, as she had previously served as head of Marvel Productions, and had also attempted this exact same kind of project with Sentai's 5th series, Taiyo Sentai Sun Vulcan.
She's the only person who said, "There's something there." Her boss even told her that she's playing her career by putting this show on. But she believed in it, and she just put it on.
So they pivoted to adapt the most recent series at the time, Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, and created the production formula that would define the franchise going forward. Comb through all of the Japanese footage from Super Sentai that could be recontextualized to remove any traces of its Japanese origins, dub over the footage with new, contextually fitting dialogue and jokes that play better in the States, order the costumes to do reshoots, and film new footage to create a wholly original plot to hang around those pre-shot action scenes. They cycled through a few names, Phantoms and then Dino Rangers, before eventually settling on Something Something Power Rangers, with one producer eventually taking inspiration from the transformation sequences to dub the series Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And on August 28th, 1992, the series premieres. The pilot tested well, but when the series came out, nobody really knew what to expect. This is, for all intents and purposes, a mixed media cinematic experience that had not been attempted before and has really not been replicated since. So when that Fox Kids block came on, genuinely, nobody knew what would happen next. To illustrate the extreme rate at which this show grew in popularity, Walter Emmanuel Jones, the actor for the Black Ranger Zach Taylor, and hands down one of the chillest people I've ever met, only found out that he had an action figure based on his character the week before the show premiered. Mighty Morphin had a tight shooting schedule, to put it lightly. And the fact that the cast were only really shooting half a show means they really had no concept of the show they were making. Power Rangers is a show that goes beyond being assembled in the editing bay. They had to find the show in the editing bay. Jones found out about the toy because a kid had recognized him and even pointed out that Jones's face was on the box. And that's illustrative of just how much the toys are the Power Rangers brand. Almost as illustrative as realizing this franchise has an approximate gross of $8.67 billion with a B dollars, and about $8.47 billion of that is merchandise sales. Imagine being a kid in the early 1990s, like Scott Holm, who won a sweepstakes that got him literally every Power Rangers toy on the market in 1993.
Power Rangers was the thing that everyone was talking about at school. From the first toy commercial all the way to the premiere of the show, everyone was hooked. We pretended and played Power Rangers on the playground, fighting about who got to be which Power Ranger. You have exactly what a 7-year-old kid in the 90s was looking for.
And beyond that, I think this show was kind of an impressive step forward for representation in children's entertainment, especially for the Fox Kids superhero bubble. Sure, you had X-Men, which is both an allegory for racism and features more than a few characters that aren't straight white men, but this was a live-action show about teenagers that prominently featured two compelling and kick-ass women, one of whom was Asian, a black man who primarily used dance as a form of fighting, and a partly Native American man as the team's leader. And every member of the team was a good role model. They were kind, studious, noble, and genuinely heroic. Yes, it was odd that the Red Ranger was Native American, the Black Ranger was Black, and the Yellow Ranger was Asian, but this was an incredibly diverse cast of characters that kids could unabashedly look up to in a time where that wasn't exactly a priority for children's media. And since it's the only thing that matters, the show is also making bank. Hell, they ran this show 6 times a week and got to a point where they had to commission Toei to film new footage so that they could keep the show going. Sounds like the perfect little production, right? No. Very famously, those 3 aforementioned Rangers of color left the show, and it is very unsurprising that those 3 actors left due to a severe gap in pay between them and their white co-stars. This was the first visible crack in the Power Rangers Foundation, one that showed its face immediately, as opposed to David Yost, Billy's actor, leaving way later down the line due to some level of hazing due to his sexual orientation. The other notable crack in my mind was the theatrically released movie from 1995, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
What is that odious stench? Smells like teenagers.
Abandoning the Japanese footage and spandex in exchange for wholly original plot elements and PVC armor, this movie did okay. They made it for $15 million, and it made back a little over 4 times as much, but didn't nearly set any precedents for the franchise or push it into a new golden era. Hell, it's not even canon. The crack in the foundation part, to me, is really the critical reception. Obviously, critics are less favorable towards movies primarily intended to get children to want to buy more toys, and while my nostalgia tells me this film is a rip-roaring good time, my more analytical self is found agreeing with the first line of Roger Ebert's review from the film's release in 1995. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie is about as close as you can get to absolute nothing and still have a product to project on the screen. And if nothing else, this movie proved that Power Rangers was fallible, and it highlighted one of the franchise's biggest bugs and features: Super Sentai. The Japanese footage can be restrictive, but it is the literal lifeblood of the franchise. Super Sentai is Power Rangers, and Power Rangers is Super Sentai. Hell, one of the big debates among fans is about how and why Power Rangers makes changes from its Sentai counterpart. But a big part of the appeal of Power Rangers, both to the audience and the people spending the money to make it, is that it's not a wholly original creation, but a hybrid of Eastern sensibilities around action, creature design, and concept, and Western sensibilities about storytelling, children's entertainment, and marketability. It keeps the show profitable, understandable, and predictable, but in a good way. It's a simple story. Teenagers, problems, mentor, monsters, morphers, explosion, Megazord, rinse, repeat, Power Rangers. To abandon that lifeblood is to abandon that which makes Power Rangers works, and I want you to keep that sentiment in your pocket for now. As we all know by now, Power Rangers didn't solely exist on the Mighty Morphin brand for too long, since we briefly had an adaptation of Ninja Sentai Kakuranger as Mighty Morphin Season 3.5, aka Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers, before ultimately becoming Power Rangers Zeo, which essentially existed as a narrative explanation for a behind-the-scenes necessity. They ran right the fuck through all the Z-Ranger footage and decided to hop onto Choriki Sentai O-Ranger for footage, meaning they needed an explanation for the team dropping back to 5 Rangers, the new enemies, the new costumes, the new Zords, etc. According to my research, there was also an element here that the show might have also gotten cancelled. Apparently the ratings started to drop in Season 3 and was actually getting outdone by Big Bad Beetleborgs, another Saban production. So Zeo was meant to be the facelift/soft reboot the franchise needed to garner new audience and renew interest. Kinda goes without saying that this would impact the entire franchise from this point forward, opting not to make multiple seasons of the same show for the most part, but having the show cycle through different titles, aesthetics, and themes while continuing the same narrative. Zeo, Turbo, and eventually taking the Power Rangers into space! Of course, that interstellar maneuver came partly as a result of the low ratings from the first half of Turbo and the tie-in film/pilot Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. A movie that sucks real bad and only made $1 million in profit and killed childhoods, and it stinks, and I don't like it. But there's a lot of evidence in the writing of Power Rangers in Space that suggests it was meant to be the end. The search for Zordon, the use of old villains, and eventually the sacrifice of Zordon to destroy evil throughout the universe. And the ultimate death sentence. This was the Power Rangers team that crossed over with Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. which distantly implies, since Next Mutation was intended to be canon to the original trilogy of live-action films from the 90s, and since there aren't any dimension-hopping shenanigans here, that the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from the 90s are canon to the Power Rangers continuity. Considering that Next Mutation started a few months before the airing of that episode of Power Rangers in Space, and directly states that the Turtles are 17 going on 18, we can surmise that the Turtles, assuming their 1990 film takes place during its release year, are actually 12 or 13, despite Splinter saying the Turtles have been living in the sewers for 15 years as of the first movie. I'm going to chalk that up to the Turtles continuity being slightly misaligned and say that those movies don't take place within their release years and clump them all into 1993. That would be a reasonable jump from 15 in 93 to about 18 in 97, depending on when their birthdays are. All of this to say, despite the Ninja Turtles crossover being kinda silly and directly tied to a show nobody really likes, I think it does kinda retroactively canonize the dubiously canon Power Rangers Ninja Turtles comic crossovers. And not only that, but it creates an argument that the Turtles that cross over with the Power Rangers in that comic are actually the ones from the 1990s movies. There was absolutely zero reason for me to go on this tangent, but it made me happy, and that's what counts. Ultimately, I know the only logic behind this was, hey, Saban produces 2 shows about multicolor-wearing teens using martial arts to fight monsters, let's have them hang out together, but this is my channel, damn it, and I'll make you listen to whatever headcanon I want. So after wrapping up what the kids call the Zordon era, considering his major involvement across the first 4 series, Power Rangers hit a bit of a lull in the post-Zordon era, or the stumbling years as I like to call them. This era did start the trend of bringing back last season's theme for a crossover, which I've always loved. The production values went up overall, and there were especially some writing and acting high points in Time Force. Oh, hi, Virgil. But this era didn't really do anything that grabbed me overall, personally. And that seems to be the critical sentiment as well. Anytime this show hit a stride with darker subject matter that really grabbed people, or a particular season performed well enough to have the second season commissioned even, the show would stumble along some unforeseen behind-the-scenes dilemma. Whether that be Saban wanting to promote new animated series ventures, or, to lead into our next segment, being bought out by a little-known media conglomerate you may have heard of called, hang on, I have this here, the Walt Disney Company. Power Rangers is a unique little brand in that despite being bought out by Disney, it managed to wriggle its way back out, and even into independence in some capacity, but that's getting ahead of myself. Disney owned Power Rangers for about a decade, starting in 2001. And this is one of those things where Power Rangers wasn't exactly the goal, just a perk of Disney buying Fox Family worldwide. Also, as a result of this purchase, Power Rangers Wild Force, the 10th anniversary season and noted Saban production, was released on Jetix, despite not following numerous staples of production that defined the Disney era. Man, you guys remember Jetix? It did, like, reruns of the Marvel 90s shows, and, like, a bunch of the other old, like, Fox Kids stuff. You guys remember Chaotic? Remember Yin Yang Yo? You remember Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go? I do, I have a DVD with a few episodes of that show somewhere. Hey, good times. But the Disney era of Power Rangers began in earnest with Ninja Storm, which bore a lot of the trademarks of this era, like a team that doesn't start with 5 and/or end with 6, production taking place in New Zealand rather than LA because it was cheaper, the Rangers having unique individual powers, and adhering to more popular trends at the time. That's always one thing that made the Disney era stand out to me. It tried to hone in on like what was popular and considered cool in a way that instantly dates the show, but it's like really charming. Like, Ninja Storm had this, like, lean into, you know, sort of motocross and BMX. Operation Overdrive and Mystic Force had hip-hop themes because it was more popular in rock at the time. But then Jungle Fury kind of brought it back with pop rock, and then RPM closed it out with metal. Back on the production side of things, it's important to note that Disney itself didn't explicitly handle production of the show, and the IP was managed by a subsidiary called Buena Vista Entertainment, which saw the show become deunionized, had production moved to New Zealand to keep the costs down, the only reason the show continued, I might add, and eliminating some previous crew members while also bringing ones from as far back as Turbo into the fold. I know I keep bringing up that shift to New Zealand, but it is important. The main reason Disney chose to keep the show running was that producing the show there was just way cheaper, though it did come with some drawbacks. Tony Oliver, who was a voice actor, writer, and producer for the show and bears Tommy Oliver as his namesake, got to see some of the on-set production for seasons set in this era and said this in 2007.
With Saban, we had a particular set of criteria for each season. Each actor had to have martial arts, dance, or gymnastics in their background to be a ranger. We kept this criteria even in the later seasons so that the actors would be able to do a smaller stunt if necessary. and we would pick from a huge pool of actors out of Los Angeles, New York, Dallas, Orlando, and parts of Canada. When Disney took over, this created a different criteria and also a different set of problems. They shoot the show in New Zealand now, so they now cast out of that area and also have access to a huge pool of British/Commonwealth actors. So you're not gonna get a lot of stunt-prepared actors. I know some fans might not like that, but it's a safer form of production, which is what Disney wants.
This era had about the same ratings you'd expect. Every new season brings in great ratings just for being fresh and new, and then loses steam as it goes along. I have no evidence to support this little theory I'm about to spit, but I personally blame it on how bad Operation Overdrive was, because I'm petty like that. You kind of see the acknowledgement of the end show up in R.E.A.M, which was kind of the going away party. Like, sure, go for basically a post-apocalypse, set it in an alternate universe, give it a metal-ass theme, fuck yeah, dude. Ultimately, after R.E.A.M ended production and Disney did a very strange re-release for Mighty Morphin, the rights were bought back by Saban Brands. And so begin the dark times.
Pay attention.
The Neo-Saban era, because I refuse to call this shit the Saban Brands era, is kind of the beginning of the end in my eyes. So I'm not really going to talk about ratings and talk exclusively about production. Although it is worth noting that this era is marred by what is widely considered a major dip in the overall quality of writing, and ironically less mature content than prior seasons. Yes, the fan consensus is that this era was less mature than the one produced by fucking Disney. But like I said, this is where a lot of the problems start, as early as Power Rangers Samurai. These mega modes and Zord cockpit footage were completely original, which shows a willingness to drop more money. The problem is, quite frankly, this was pushing the digital era. And I don't want to sound like a boomer, but the rise of the iPad kid means that toy sales are going to go down, so there's less profit to be made by dumping more money into a show's production itself. I want to iterate that that's mostly speculation on my part, but I think if you're like me and grew up with your earliest Power Rangers shows before the Neo-Saban era, or at least if you're old enough to have set foot inside of a Toys R Us, you know that the market for kids' toys has lessened by a lot. It still exists, but like I said, lessened, and I think that by the time this era had rolled around, Bandai and Saban were starting to feel it. It also did not help that die-hard Power Rangers fans felt a major dip in quality. With both seasons of Samurai, both seasons of Megaforce, both seasons of Dino Charge, and both seasons of Ninja Steel garnering a lot of negative responses, ranging from disappointment to outright fury. Fans were upset with the direction the franchise was going, especially since the internet age allowed them to compare and contrast with their Sentai counterparts, which were largely just better. Hell, the biggest talking point about Samurai to this day is that it's just a worse and whiter version of Samurai Sentai Shinkenger. However, overall middling reviews were not a death sentence, as the franchise had come back from that before. So after Saban sold the rights to Hasbro in 2018, all it would take was one producer, one guy who truly understood the power. I'm not going to pretend like one person can be singularly responsible for the downfall of an entire media empire spanning decades across movies, television, comics, video games, and a metric ass boat of toys. That's not how business works. That's not how art works. And it would be arrogant of me to say that Simon Bennett killed Power Rangers or anything like that. That being said, I hope that every time he goes to cook something, it's cold in the middle, and then he has to keep reheating it until it eventually burns everywhere but the middle. Simon Bennett, if you're not aware, is the director-producer who effectively ran the Power Rangers brand from about Ninja Steel to its end with Cosmic Fury, and you're gonna very quickly understand just how upsetting that is. After directing 15 episodes of Beast Morphers, he served as a showrunner on Dino and Cosmic Fury, as well as for the 30th anniversary special Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always. I already did a video about that, you should go watch it, it's lonely. With the end of Cosmic Fury, Bennett's contract with Hasbro was ended, and the future of Power Rangers has been in an odd state. But I want to look at his influence, starting with Twitter.
My day be so fine, then boom, Twitter.
Specifically, I look at this singular tweet.
If it wasn't for Power Rangers, I would have never crossed paths with Super Sentai. I'm not a fan of either show, but have thoroughly enjoyed the encounter, and working on Power Rangers.
Now, I don't think this mindset is a bad one. On one hand, being embarrassed of or indifferent to the source material does not automatically mean that the adaptation will be bad. Joe and Anthony Russo were not fans of Captain America before taking on the task of guiding that character forward. And a lot of people agree that Winter Soldier and Civil War are among the best MCU films and really got Cap as a character. On the other hand, avoiding certain aspects of your brand's identity can not only leave fans wanting more, but lead to an ultimately less satisfying story. See Singer's X-Men for proof. However, the issue to me is not that Bennett said he wasn't a fan of Power Rangers or Sentai, it's what prompted that statement.
To reach a large mainstream audience, the franchise has to move away from its tokusatsu roots.
So like, no, you fucking ding-a-ling. Power Rangers is absolutely a mainstream franchise. Check the fucking Wikipedia for highest grossing franchises. Power Rangers still floats, like I said earlier, around the mid-40th place with $8.6 billion with a B dollars. In between Mario and Middle-earth and outdoing franchises like the DCEU, Sesame Street, and Superman, just to name a fucking few. And part of why it's been so profitable is being rooted in Super Sentai, a move that made the show far cheaper to produce. Avoiding that technique expands the storytelling potential, yes, but some seasons have found clever ways to utilize the footage in a way that doesn't feel limiting, and it keeps the show cheap to produce, and thus way more profitable. And to move away from the tokusatsu roots is to deny Power Rangers of being what it is. It's a franchise defined by colorful costumes and battles with giant monsters. That's Toku. Why the fuck did Martha just open this fucking script while I'm recording? Is she just now hold up. 4:58 p.m. on October 3rd. I'm leaving this in the video. 4:58 p.m. It is October 3rd, and now is when Martha's reading this. I have been telling her to read this script like literally all week. That's fucking crazy. I completely forgot where I was. If you want to say that Bennett was, for some reason, going with the literal translation of the word, that being special effects, in reference to the fact that things like Sentai, Ultraman, and Godzilla are all partly defined by intensive practical effects, fine, there's plenty of places for Power Rangers to sub out practical suits or explosions for digital creations, even though those are more expensive from what I've heard. But I think we all know what he meant. I believe that Simon Bennett thinks that Power Rangers is too silly, and that's what he meant by the franchise's tokusatsu roots. But that's what it is. It's a story about kids in colorful costumes beating up monsters every week with toyetic weapons and transforming robots. It's a silly franchise, and there's not a fucking thing wrong with that. And more than that, we've been proving this point since 2000, but if there's anything that proves to be unpopular both critically and financially, it's when you take the fun and silliness out of franchises that are inherently a little goofy. Especially ones about fucking superheroes. It killed the X-Men movies, it killed the DCEU basically on arrival, it killed the Bayverse Transformers, and now it killed the Power Rangers. It's no secret that Netflix was, at some point, planning on doing a reboot of Power Rangers in some capacity. One aimed to have a more adult tone for people who grew up with the franchise. It seems Hasbro is still intent on making this reboot with a new creative partner, but until then, it seems like the brand is a bit dead. Sure, there's new comics, sure, there's new games on the way, but for right now, Power Rangers is kind of hibernating, and this amazingly more phenomenal franchise that has carried on for over 30 years, by effectively following a formula and just changing the fine details, has come to a temporary close. And normally I'd be kind of cynical about this, but I found a certain sense of hope about things like this. Like, look at it this way. The day I'm wrapping up writing this is September 30th, and I'm recording it on October 3rd of 2024. And Chucky just got canceled after 3 seasons a few days ago. And while I'm nervous about the future of that franchise, I'm keen to say it persists because, well,
I'll be back. I always come back.
That's where I'm at with Power Rangers. This is a franchise that has been almost canceled several times before, and has enough popularity that I truly believe it has to come back, hopefully under a new leader who understands why it works. Because I don't think Power Rangers has been lucky enough to avoid cancellation all these years, nor do I think it was all, some big master plan. So if it isn't luck and it isn't precision, there's only one real option in my mind. Power Rangers persists because the power protects it. Always. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you like this one, please consider checking out the rest of my content, as well as liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to see more. As always, I gotta thank the patrons on screen, as well as the following $10 tier patrons: Devrick5, Did You Get It Guy, Spark Plasma, and Wrestling Fan 99. If you feel so compelled, consider joining them to see your name on screen, get access to exclusive videos, and early access to other videos, and overall just support the channel so I can put even more effort into awesome videos like this one. Alternatively, you can use my Fortnite creator code, Chimera Films, all one word. The next time you want to get a cool scan or emote, you can follow my Instagram if you want to see my very occasional art, or follow my Twitter for random announcements and other thoughts. And lastly, join the Discord if you want to interact with like-minded fans, stay up to date on content, or reach out to me directly. Everything's linked down below. Thanks everyone.